Time in Stockton, you now have access to a professional numerologist here to help you light your own way. I'm in the booth to help you find your own truth. Tune in to Divine Numerology every Friday at 3 p.m. on The Voice of Stockton.
Welcome to the afternoon entertainment hour at OJ's Juice Bar, and here's today's juice.
Listen to OJ's Juice Bar, Sundays at 4 p.m. on KXVS, The Voice of Stockton.
KXVS, The Voice of Stockton, live. The Voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
Attention, Stockton. Are you experiencing a transition in business, relationships, health, or your life purpose? I'm Darius Oliver, and I help people to look within and find clarity and direction in their constantly changing lives. Tune in and listen with me as I go deep into your patterns and personal cycles through divine numerology. Any life transition you're experiencing can be illuminated by an in-depth analysis of your chart. For the first time in Stockton, you now have access to a professional numerologist here to help you light your own way. I'm in the booth to help you find your own truth. Tune in to Divine Numerology every Friday at 3 p.m. on The Voice of Stockton.
Welcome to the afternoon entertainment hour at OJ's Juice Bar, and here's today's juice.
Listen to OJ's Juice Bar, Sundays at 4 p.m. on KXVS, The Voice of Stockton.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Julie Dameron, local veterinarian for over 20 years. I am so excited about my new radio show, Tales and Tips, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Voice of Stockton, and KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
The Third City Podcast is a production of Third City Coalition. In our show, we examine case studies in urban development in Stockton and other cities like Stockton across the country, exploring their local and regional impacts. Individual efforts play a role in Third City development, and it starts with you.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
KXVS, The Voice of Stockton, live. The Voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, The Voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
Welcome to the Voice of Stockton, KXVS, and it's on a Monday, January 15, 2018. My guest is Alex Breitler. I said it right. And He's a reporter from the Stockton Record, and you are the environmental reporter, right?
Yep.
So I'm glad you come again on the first year of my show, which is good. Okay. So I'm glad I'm honored that you came.
No, thanks for having me again. This was fun last time.
It was. So I would like to talk about the environmental issue that you have printed last 2 weeks about the fish, the Gulf, and also the Delta.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk about, at the end, we'll talk about the kid with the cabbage patch.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Okay?
Yeah, it's been it's going to be a really interesting, 2018 is going to be a really interesting year on environmental issues. It's Governor Brown's last term in office, and there's just a lot going on. Everyone knows, of course, about the Delta tunnels, which we'll talk about. But I think there's going to be a lot going on in 2018. You know, we're still kind of waiting for winter to arrive. We had that really big storm. Yeah, we had a good rain, but we're still below normal, and the snowpack in the Sierras is horrible. It is.
Why is that? Because they had a good snow back then, right early in the end of the year, right?
We had a really wet storm, but it was warm, so it was almost all rain unless you got up to the very top of the Sierras. So I saw some pictures from a friend on Facebook who went up to Silver Lake, up Highway 88 yesterday, and it looked like it was just bare granite up there. There was very little snow, little patches here and there, but
so it's kind of dry.
It's very dry, and the snow is important because it melts slowly over time, and we can control that, as opposed to rain, which just dumps into our reservoirs. And then it's just harder to control rain because it runs off so quickly. So we'd rather have a nice, healthy snowpack than just having rain. So that's why snow is a big deal.
Okay. So how did they already measure how the water will be next year, or what?
No, it's really hard to make a decision about that until basically April. Because, it's only mid-January. We still have the rest of this month. There's supposed to be a cold storm coming in tonight, which is finally going to bring some snow. And then we have February and March and, even into April, sometimes even May, we can get some pretty decent storms. So we don't have a good idea on water supply yet. The good news is, even though the snowpack is in really bad shape, we have reservoirs that still have a lot of water in them from last year.
So I heard that the county supervisor had kind of released some water to avoid the over thing. So did we waste a lot of water because of that?
Well, waste is it's a controversial word because water does have it helps the environment of the Delta.
It's a commodity. It's life.
Right now. Did we need to allow all of that water to flow through to the ocean? Probably not. We probably could have used at least some of it last year. Mm-hmm. We had a flood last year. We had a lot of water coming into the Delta, and we were in a situation where there was a very real danger that we could have serious levee failures, and that didn't really happen.
Well, but I know that the level that they have not really worked on that lately. They stopped that project. So over the last 30 or 35 years, they've put a lot of work in on the levees. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent improving those levees. And if you go back and you look, we haven't had a real serious levee failure since 2004. So it's now been almost 14 years since that happened. That was out on Jones Tract in the Delta. And part of that is because we've been in drought much of that time, so we haven't had a whole lot of water out there. And all the dirty plastic paper and all that.
Yeah, but it's good news that we haven't had a levee failure in a long time. It shows that that the engineers who work on our Delta levees have made some progress. But there are a lot of folks out there who think that when we have a flood like we had last year, that we should be able to divert a little bit more of that water and do something with it, like put it underground, where we have all sorts of room to store water for dry years.
So why did no one didn't pick that idea from? Only you know.
No, it's not only me. No. It's just hard. It takes a long time to do anything in water, it takes forever to there's a local water official who told me once that it takes the patience of Job to get anything done on water. It just takes years and years and years. So I think there are some things that are happening that will help us take advantage of some of that. The next time we have a flood, maybe take more advantage of that water. But it takes a very long time to get stuff like that off the ground.
Interesting. That is interesting what you said. So tell me about the fish. What you're talking about your last article, because a lot of people ask me what does that mean. I'm like, I'll talk to it. I'll get you with that. So tell me about your last article. You're talking about the fish.
Right. So we're talking about the Delta smelt. Now the Delta smelt is
how do you spell it?
SMELT.
LT. Okay.
It's a fish that's only about the length of your finger, and it's so endangered. There are so few of them that they don't really serve any obvious purpose for people. Well, they're in the past there were millions and millions and millions of them, and you could actually have, theoretically, back in the day, you could have had a commercial smelt harvest, and people eat smelt.
Oh, really?
But there are so few of them that can't happen now. So they seem like an insignificant fish, right? I mean, who cares about a 3-inch long fish? It's not like it's a big salmon,
right,
or a charismatic.
Well, you got a pet.
Right?
Now
Yeah.
It's to the levee and grab them.
Yeah.
It looks like a little guppy.
Yeah. Good luck finding a Delta smelt. The importance of the smelt and the reason this matters is because it kind of symbolizes the health of the Delta as a whole. So it's kind of like the canary in the coal mine. When the smelt are dying, as they have been for decades now, it tells you that something is wrong with the Delta itself. And of course, the Delta as a whole, we may not care about the smelt, you and I might not, but the Delta as a whole is very important to Stockton. We're right on the edge of the Delta here. We drink water from the Delta. We fish out there. We play out there with our boats and our water skis, and it's an important part of our culture and our economy here. So that's why we care about the Delta smelt, even though you would never. You
never thought of it
at
least. But do you think that a lot of people are using chemical to throw chemical into the Delta? Are they being watchful? Are they being proactive?
Well, there's a lot of causes for the decline of the Delta smelt. And it's really hard to kind of rank them. Mm-hmm. And that's what everyone wants to do, right? Everyone wants to say, this is the number 1 issue, this is the number 2 issue. That's very difficult to do. Part of it is the water that we send south to agriculture in the San Joaquin Valley and to the people down in LA and some other areas. When we take water out of the Delta, it changes the way water flows through the Delta. Instead of, if we weren't here, right, water would come down from the mountains, it would flow down the rivers, and it would all funnel through the Delta, and it would all go out to San Francisco Bay and the ocean, right? That's just the way a watershed works. The water flows downhill, right?
Yeah.
Well, we built, in order to send water south and to, facilitate Southern California's needs, and other areas as well. It's not just LA. We built these very large pumping plants at the southern end of the Delta down near Tracy. And the difficulty with those pumps, they're very, very powerful. And when they're running, they literally pull some of the Delta backward toward the pumps. So you have these unnatural flows.
The current,
right. The rivers run upstream, basically, which sounds bizarre. And if you were looking at it, it wouldn't look that strange because it's an area that is tidal. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, you can't really see it very well, but they're running upstream. And what that does is it creates this very strange situation for fish. Delta smelt are tiny. They're not good swimmers. And they get sucked in with the flow when the river's moving backward, and they can actually get drawn in so far that they get ground up in the pumps and they get killed in the pumps. Mm-hmm. Even if they don't get killed in the pumps, they're brought into an area of the Delta where they have very little habitat. They don't have the conditions that they need to thrive in that part of the Delta. So the pumps cause smelt to get into an area where
They get trapped and they die.
Yeah, they get trapped and they die.
All that chemical that's there.
Right. So one of the things that we do, and one of the reasons that smelt are so controversial, is that when they are dying at the pumps, the government has the authority to turn the pumps down so that they're not pumping as much water. They're actually required to do that under some rules written by federal biologists. So that's very controversial. You see the folks down south who want to, they want to augment their water supply, and they see that this little fish that is as long as your finger, right, is preventing them from getting all the water that they think that they are entitled to out of the delta.
So the fish is like a scavenger, like eat algae and anything like that.
Yeah, it just eats small, plankton, and it's.
So it's important. Whatever.
It's a part of the food chain.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
But it's just a real hot button issue for people down south because they see they think it's unfair that their water supply is affected by the smelt. Now, let me say very quickly, they're not the only ones to blame for this issue. I mean, smelt are also affected by invasive species. We have a lot of critters out in the delta who don't belong there. They're not supposed to be there, and they've been introduced over the years by things that we've done, right?
Like goldfish.
Right, and some of those invasive species eat food that the smelt need, so that hurts the smelt, or they might eat smelt themselves.
Right.
Then there's things that you and I do, frankly. Everyone in Stockton who drives a car, if that car is leaking fluid onto the roadway, where is that water going to go when it rains like it did like crazy last week? It's going to go into the storm drain. And those storm drains, and a lot of people still don't understand this, it's kind of frustrating. Those storm drains that you see in the gutter, they don't go to a treatment plant. They go straight into the delta.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, so
we drink it in it too.
Well, what we drink is treated though. But the point is, that's terrible for fish.
Of course, people throw a prescription pill, they go oil it there.
Yep. Fertilizer from your yard.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on. So all of us are responsible for that. And I'll tell you, every time it's clockwork in Stockton. Every time we have the first big rain of the year.
Right.
All of that stuff that has accumulated for months and months over the entire course of the summer, all of that gets washed into the gutter, and we have usually we have a large fish kill somewhere in Stockton, maybe in Smith Canal or on the Calaveras River, and you'll walk by and you'll see hundreds of fish that are belly up, dead in the water, and it's because that first jolt of storm water that they get through that gutter is so heavily polluted.
Oh yeah.
So that's an issue for all the fish out there, including smelt. And there's other issues too. So the point is, I just want to be clear that it's not just about the water we send south. There are things that we are responsible for as well,
right,
that affect the well-being of the smelt. But
it's also the local government that are responsible for our health, our what do you call it? Yeah, our health.
Yeah.
And if they're not helping the people getting us sicker, getting a lot of flu shot and health-wise and everything, what the hell? What benefit are they getting it? Money, right?
Right.
So environment is a very key thing. Money's not going to do anything after you die. I mean, but no value after you use it. You don't use it. But
if I could add real quickly.
Go ahead.
So what happened with the smelt just a couple weeks ago?
Okay.
Is that they released the latest population count. It's an estimate. Actually, it's really not. I shouldn't say that. It's not a population estimate. But every fall, the fish experts go out in a boat on the delta, and they tow a giant net behind the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And they collect fish. They do this for 4 months, September through December. They collect fish in that net, and they count them up. And
by one?
Yeah, they check out.
They put them in a machine and they
no.
process it.
I bet you they wish they could do that because it's a tedious task to go through and identify all those fish. But they do. They go through one by one. They figure out what species it is, and then that's how they track the welfare of the population. So they spend 4 months doing this all over the delta, from way out in Sassoon Bay, all the way up toward Sacramento and down into the central delta. And in 4 months, Do you want to guess how many Delta smelt they found?
Probably 1,000.
Oh, they found 2.
2?
They found 2 Delta smelt. Yeah.
Oh my God! Are they the endangered species? Are they male and female or what?
They've been.
What?
Well, that's a very good point. So here's the thing about smelt. This is more than anyone ever wanted to know about smelt.
I definitely want to know about that.
Most smelt only live for 1 year.
Oh wow!
So if they can't find each other in the spring to reproduce,
right,
you have a serious problem. Actually, it's not in the spring; it's later in the year. I got that wrong. But if they can't find each other, if there are so few smelt in the Delta that they can't find each other to reproduce, you have a serious problem. They have to be able to reproduce. The species as a whole has to be able to reproduce every year, or you're going to have a crash in their population numbers.
Everything needs to be an instinct already.
And what's so discouraging about only finding 2 Delta smelt this year is the fact that last year was very, very wet. We had we were just talking about that flood.
Yeah.
We had all that water coming through the Delta, and usually a real wet year like that is really good for Delta smelt. The last time that happened, in 2011, we saw a tenfold increase in the number of smelt they found out in the Delta the next fall.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people, I'm not an expert, but I thought, hey, we'll see some, a modest improvement in smelt numbers.
Yeah, you're trying to be positive about
right,
that.
You think it would be a little bit better than last year.
Improvement.
It was actually slightly worse than last year. I mean, it can't get much worse than only finding 2 fish.
Well, 2 fish is not good enough.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a male or female. How are they going to reproduce?
Now the Delta's a big place.
Yeah.
There are clearly more than 2 Delta smelt
I hope so.
in the Delta. There are.
Or might they've been looking for all the money that they've been getting. What to do?
I mean, there are thousands of Delta smelt in the Delta, but they only found 2, and that's the worst showing that's the worst it's ever been for over 4 months.
Oh wow!
So a lot of people do feel like the smelt is kind of on the fast road toward extinction.
Right.
We haven't had a species go extinct in the Delta since the 1950s.
I disagree. I think there have been a lot of animals that we have not considered that are in the endangered species list in San Joaquin. I don't know if you know about it. If you do, can you tell us?
Oh well, we have a lot of endangered critters. I mean, there's the cutest endangered species we have in this county, for anyone who cares, is the riparian brush rabbit, which is this tiny little bunny down at the that you can find down on the San Joaquin River, kind of in the south side of the county. Caswell.
It's like
It's smaller than
like a long ear rabbit.
No, it has long ears, but it's very small. It's like the size of it's very small. And you can find those down at Caswell State Park. For people who've been down to Caswell before, that's kind of the area where the bunnies live. So we have bunnies. We have a critter called the giant garter snake, which sounds kind of ominous.
But
it's not actually that big.
Right.
But that's an endangered species. I mean, we do have a lot of endangered species around here, but we haven't had any of them actually go extinct, like they no longer exist.
Right.
Wiped off the face of the earth. We haven't had that happen until potentially the Delta smelt, if in fact the smelt go extinct, which I think a lot of experts think is kind of almost inevitable at this point because there are so few of them. So
in other words, what you're saying that the water is not, the water is so polluted that what's going to benefit our health, right?
Yeah,
if this one died, then
what's next?
What's next? Yes.
What's next? And it can't be good.
Because a lot of people having cancer. People don't know where they're getting from. Men, women, kids. They're mostly. I mean, they're drinking water.
Cancer is complicated because that you can, certain environmental risks can increase the odds of getting cancer.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that just because you got cancer, that's why you got it, right?
No, yeah. I'm saying.
So cancer is complicated, but you're right. I mean, there's the EPA, the
they
environmental.
Don't take care of that.
What's that?
They don't even protect that either. You think so?
Don't protect what?
The EPA, like you were going to say, do you think they protect us?
Well, no, I was just going to say that they, this is getting off track, but...
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
Okay.
It's interesting, though. The EPA, a few years ago, put out some data showing that people who live in certain areas of Stockton are more likely to get cancer solely as a result of air pollution. If all other factors were equal,
right?
Like if everyone, smoking, all that stuff, if you ignore all that other stuff,
Right.
people in these neighborhoods where they are more exposed to pollution.
Well,
like,
what about Stockton? We had a very bad dry spell.
oh, we had horrible.
We had
yeah.
fire, forest fire, and all that stuff.
We had horrible air quality before that last storm.
Right.
And a lot of that, some of it might have been wildfires, but a lot of it was residential burning. People,
Like arson.
well, people,
Careless.
like fireplace,
Okay.
people who are lighting up fireplaces, because we have no burn days.
Right.
A lot of people know we have certain days when they say, hey, you can't burn this day because the air quality is expected to be really bad.
Right.
So part of what we saw with that really bad air was people ignoring those rules.
Right.
And lighting fires in their fireplaces, even though it was technically illegal. Now, our air was not nearly as bad as it was down south. Fresno and Bakersfield.
I remember that we were flowing over here. Sacramento got the air from the fire, and I remember it was dark, and
it was bad.
And I was like, oh my god, I can't breathe.
We have had days in the last few months where the air quality was so bad that everyone was supposed to be indoors, and not just people who have special, who maybe have asthma or respiratory other respiratory problems. Not just folks who have special issues, but everyone.
Right.
Even somebody who's like
healthy
as a all of them were supposed to stay indoors on days like that. And so it's that rain we had last week was, if nothing else, I mean, it was good for our water supply, but it was also just wonderful because it cleared all that stuff out of here. Mm-hmm. And finally we had some decent air quality. It was, for a few weeks there, it was really, really bad. But anyway, so the point is that there are cancer risks that are elevated because of exposure to maybe it's diesel pollution from trucks on the freeway. Like if you live close to the freeway, you might be more vulnerable than someone who lives a mile away from the freeway. That kind of thing.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying, that everything combined, the water, the environment, what you eat, the asbestos, the quality of the culture, community, they're all factor right there.
They are, and it's just hard to quantify. It's hard to say, okay, what is my, how much of my problem is an environmental problem versus even just genetics.
Right.
Some people are maybe more predisposed to get cancer or other illnesses. So it's just always hard to say exactly what the driving force is. But you're absolutely correct that there are people in Stockton who are more vulnerable. If you ignore all that other stuff, again, if you ignore genetics and whether someone smokes or doesn't smoke, all that stuff, if you ignore all of that, there are people in this town who are more vulnerable than others. And they tend to be people who are in lower income neighborhoods, and they tend to be people of color.
Right.
There are disparate impacts there.
But are you talking about? Like for example, the environment is very important. I believe I always want to become a environmentalist because I believe that this is the only thing that you're gonna live on. You're gonna by your mean, and it's scary. It's very scary because earthquake, catastrophe, volcano, rain. We're having a lot of odd storms from the east, from the middle, and we're going backward. It's kind of like the earth is tilting differently.
Well,
but at the same time, I heard from NASA they said that the ozone is repairing itself.
Oh yeah, the ozone. Yeah, well.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
Climate is fascinating. The whole issue of climate change is fascinating. That's a difficult story to report on. Because, again, just because you have a heat wave doesn't automatically mean that it's because of climate change, right?
Well,
it doesn't automatically mean. What climate change might do is it might take a heat wave that you would have had anyway and make it worse.
Right.
Which is what happened, I don't know if you were here in 2006, when we had 20-something people die because of that horrible heat wave in July where it got up to 115, 116.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no relief. And it went on and on for, I think, a couple weeks. I don't have it right in front of me.
I think I remember that. I didn't go out anywhere that day when we bought a house there.
Oh, it was
no air conditioning. We had to throw all the heat out.
A lot of people passed away. And I talked to an expert a climatologist who studied that heat wave after the fact.
Right.
And he concluded that the heat wave would have happened anyway. It would have been very hot.
Right.
But that man-made climate change worsened it. And so we can only assume that that caused additional people to pass away. We don't know. We can't
but
say.
But like you said, man-made environment changes. So we need to be more responsible, more prudent, that we don't at least don't escalate our planet to Earth Day. I do believe that we are responsible for our own instinct, right?
Right.
And also, I like to get on the downer side. Let's go to the golf thing. Do you have anything that was going on in Swenson golf thing regarding any fox, any what do you call protected species there?
Yeah,
That's what I heard.
So that issue is. I mean, first of all, I should say I've only written about that issue once. It's not something I'm necessarily 100% up to speed on, but I will say this. I mean, I think everyone knows that it has turned into a really big issue in town.
Mm-hmm.
You drive around that area and you see all these signs, Save Swenson, et cetera. I mean, for people who aren't familiar with what's going on.
It's a beautiful park.
It is. It's 200 plus acres. It's, most of it is not accessible to the public, so that's the one thing. You have to be a golfer to get in there. There is a small public park on one side, but the vast majority of that area is not open to the general public unless you're a golfer. So it's not like it's a place you can just go and enjoy open space. But it is beautiful, and there are beautiful old oak trees. Mm-hmm. There is a resident fox or a family of foxes out there that golfers see out there. I interviewed one golfer who experienced a moment out there that was right out of National Geographic.
Really?
So he was golfing one day, and he looked down the fairway, and he saw one of the foxes, and he wasn't too surprised about that because the foxes they're always out there. Mm-hmm. But he saw that this fox was dragging something along behind it, and it was kind of glinting silvery in the sun, and he's like, what is that? So he goes down the fairway. The fox takes off, of course, but he goes down the fairway, and what does he find down there? But he finds a big, fat steelhead, which steelhead are migratory fish. They come all the way from the Pacific Ocean. They're like salmon.
Wow.
This fish had come all the way up from the Pacific Ocean, and it had eventually, somehow found its way up 5 Mile Slough, which forms the northern boundary of that golf course. And
so there's a river right next to connected to the
but
Delta?
It's not a river. I mean, it's a
the swamp area.
It's a glorified ditch.
Okay.
I mean, it's a natural slough.
Yeah.
But it's been transformed over the years as that area
of water
became urban.
Okay.
So it's just kind of a stagnant pool.
Gotcha.
That stretches along the north side of the golf course, and that fish somehow
managed to get there.
Isn't that amazing? It got all the way through the delta, and for some reason, it could have gone up any stream or any river it wanted. Mm-hmm. It went up 5 Mile Slough, right past the golf course, and somehow that fox got his
dinner.
Yeah, he got he got a hold of that fish. The fish, I'm assuming the fish died, and that it washed up on the side.
Yeah,
of
probably
the slough.
went back belly up or whatever.
Right. It was the fish was pregnant. But anyway, the fox was dragging it home, presumably for dinner, like you said, and this
caviar and fish.
So the point is,
yes,
I mean that's kind of an amazing urban wildlife experience to have in the middle of a city of more than 300,000 people, to have a place where you can go and see and witness something like that happen.
Had that been published or that? Because that's a good story to witness of that. Because that's like, wow, that's amazing how like you said, check and balance the food chain.
Yeah. So the point is that there is value to these open spaces that we have. We don't have very many open spaces that are 200 plus acres like Swenson is. So there is, even if the public can't get in there, even if it's just for golfers, there is inherent value in having open space like that. I mean, there's just something, and it's hard to quantify that. Mm-hmm. How much is that worth, right? How much is it worth for the citizens?
You cannot value life in the tree, grass, water, fish, fox. You cannot value those things. You can't price that.
Right. There are economists who have looked at this and they've said, how do you place value on simply knowing that places like that exist and that there is a value to that? and it's hard to say, okay, how much is that? But there are economists who try to do that, and they try to just the mere knowledge that a place like this exists, and that maybe you drive by it on Ben Holt,
right?
And you look over there and you see the green open space, and you see the oak trees, and that makes you feel good.
Yeah,
and that there's value to that, whether you live in that neighborhood or not.
Well, I think also my lips got all cabby already. But anyway, my point, I think it's a beautiful place. But if it's only for golf, I think they should really open up to the public for them to go picnic. They could do things and add value to the property. But as far as, like you say, life, it's you cannot get it back.
Right.
So I am more concerned on what they focused on. Like you said, money is always the key evil thing too, but you don't put a price on life.
Right. Well, but that is the reality is, of course. So we're talking about this wonderful story with the fox and the steelhead. But the reality is that the city does have to put a lot of money into both of those golf courses, Swenson and Van Buskirk.
But there are other golf besides Buster and Swenson. There are I think there's about 50 in each. As you go along, there's a map.
Other courses?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are other courses, and that's one of the rationales for changing something at Swenson. I think the concern that the community had was that all three of the options that were studied by this consultant who came
by the developer
recently involved. Well, it wasn't. It was a study. It was not a study by any local developer. It was a study by a consultant, but all three of the alternatives that they came up with involved building houses.
Right.
The alternatives did include preserving some open space and parkland. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be, just asphalt.
But it's still when man affect environmental, it's gonna disturb the natural the natural biology.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, there's an impact there, and it affects property values, and it affects. I mean, there's issues like traffic out there. If you build a whole bunch of homes, the traffic's already pretty bad.
Not only that, nobody can afford a home nowadays, especially with $15 an hour.
Right.
You have to have at least maybe a husband, a wife, grandmother, and grandfather, an uncle, and an aunt to live in in order to pay a mortgage.
Right. So it's a hard issue, and I think that, something has to be done. Stockton we just came out of bankruptcy, and our budget is very tenuous. So we do have to be careful about what we're what we're spending.
We don't want
money
to go into bankruptcy. It's kind of like to me like we already went to bankruptcy already, and we're going to go to another one. I predict it, because the spending money on to put money into, and then you have to pull some asset from the city and to refill that fund. That's what it's like a cycle.
Right. So I think what a lot of people, and there's been a huge community response to this. People who live in that area, and also some people outside of that area who do not want that area developed. And so I think what a lot of people are trying to do right now, and the city hasn't made any decisions about this.
I think they did. Last year they made a decision, but
they haven't voted. They haven't voted on it.
But to discuss it, don't even bother discuss. Don't even bother talking about it. Let it go. Why bringing it up again? No means no. The people want. Why bring up the discussion? People don't want it. Right. Why bring it up again?
Well, the community, the real community outrage didn't happen until after they, got that consultant's report. And so, anyway, I think there's a lot of people who are asking the question: is there something we could do there that would leave the area in open space while simultaneously reducing the expenses? And that's the trick.
Well, there are other golf places that they could do it, but Ben Holt is prime. Their students go use that program for PE. Things like that are, I just hate to see that beautiful area, that tree that you don't know how long that tree been built, like 30 years or maybe 100 years, I don't know. And then all when you break it, demolish it, and it's not going to get it back.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone in that regard, and that's why I did that story. I only did one story on this subject, but I did want to point out, and I don't have a position on this, right?
Okay.
But I just wanted to point out that there is inherent value in having open space in a community.
Okay.
There's environmental values in terms of the critters out there,
right?
But there's also value for us as people who live here knowing that places like
we
that
need shade, we need air, we need the quality of oxygen and everything that goes on.
And green space helps to reduce the heat island effect, which is, when you just have miles and miles of concrete.
Right.
They've done studies. In fact, they've looked at Stockton, and they have quantified the heat island effect in Stockton. In other words, and I can't remember the numbers, I wish I brought them, but there is a neighborhood just south of the Crosstown Freeway where if you go out there on a really hot day, it's going to be a degree or two warmer there than it is going to be in a neighborhood on the edge of town where you're kind of on the edge of the heat island, right? So it's a little cooler because you're closer to farmland or the delta or whatever.
Right.
So there's a real, 1 or 2 degrees from a health perspective, that can make a difference.
Yeah, I totally
in a really bad heat wave. So anyway, so you're
that's true. That's true what you're saying. I'm glad that you are I'm glad you're environmental, but I do believe that what you're assessing are accurate. I think accurate in your opinion that by fact. I do believe that fact needs to be understood first. I call it hashtag first fact, meaning that fact comes first. We need to rely on that data. Tabloid or opinion or a commentary, but we need to go by fact. Because our environment is very important to our life and our health and animal and the food chain and our way of living and our culture and our environment, our lifestyle. All that stuff is important and raw, and people don't see that. Everything is money, 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 money.
And nowadays, the good news is you're talking about the importance of facts.
Right.
From an environment reporter's standpoint, there's more data out there than there ever has been.
Right.
I mean, they've, like I mentioned, the heat island thing. I mean, they have the data are there. You can look at your. I can't remember if it's by census tract or zip code. I think it's census tract, but you can look it up. They have a spreadsheet listing all the census tracts.
Okay.
And then they give what they think your estimated heat island effect is in your own neighborhood, which is, that's data we've never had anything like that before. So that kind of thing is very helpful for a reporter because you can take that data and you look and you see, okay, where are the impacts here? And then you can go out into those neighborhoods and talk to people about it.
How do you feel?
Your neighborhood is, and we did that. We went to that neighborhood on a hot day, and talked to people about how they cope. It's that is a neighborhood that is lower income, tends to be lower income, and many people of color, and we talked to them about, and so they struggle. I mean, it's hard for them to run their AC. They may not be able to afford running their AC.
Right.
So for them to be affected by the heat island even more than, that could be a very serious issue for them if they can't afford to run their AC.
Gotcha. Now, on that note, we're at the last of our segment. Tell me about the good news, a positive note. We're talking about the kid.
That's right. Yeah, something uplifting. So just real quickly, last week, a local kid from Stockton, his name is Tino Bruno, 9 years old. He goes to Annunciation School. He's in 4th grade. He won a contest for growing the largest cabbage. This cabbage was 29 1/4 pounds.
Wow.
And it's incredible. If anyone wants to go to my Facebook account, you'll find photos of this thing. It dwarfs this kid. He's sitting behind it, so it's a little bit misleading, but this cabbage is in front of him. And it is huge. It's the size of the cabbage head itself is the size of a globe, maybe.
Oh, wow.
A globe of the earth. And anyway, so he won $1,000.
Wow.
Won $1,000 scholarship from these this business that promotes cabbages, and it was a fun story to tell. His dad has a job that's kind of related to agriculture, and I think his son is maybe interested in going into agriculture, and that's still our leading industry in this county, and so it's just a fun story to tell. This kid with this giant 29
I know, that was
pound
awesome.
Cabbage.
Well, okay. All right. Thank you, Alex Breitler, for that uplifting note. I'd like to thank our listener, the Voice of Stockton, KXVS. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.